thank you for joining us in This Week in Turkey. I'm Senem Görür. We begin this week with Turkey-US relations. President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan is back in Turkey after a busy week in New York, where he addressed the UN General Assembly, inaugurated the Turkevi Center, and held bilateral meetings, though not the one he wanted. Back in Turkey, Erdoğan commented, "I cannot say we started well with Joe Biden."
After his New York visits, Erdoğan told reporters that I worked well with George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, but I cannot say we started well with Joe Biden. He expressed discontent with the incumbent US president and added that, after 19 years in office, I can say that we have reached a good position with the US. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan visited New York to attend the sessions of the UN General Assembly. On the first day of his visit, he officially inaugurated the Turkevi Center, or Turkish House, a 36-story building across from the United Nations headquarters. Speaking at its opening ceremony, he said the Turkevi Center will stand as a reflection of Turkey's place on the world stage ahead of the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic in 2023. In his speech at the opening session of the UNGA, Erdoğan expressed his views on issues concerning international peace and security. He announced that he would complete the ratification process of the Paris Climate Agreement. Turkey's carbon neutral target within the framework of the agreement is set as a target for 2053. Erdoğan said that Turkey would not be able to accommodate more refugees. The Turkish president also met with his counterparts and other leaders, including UK's Boris Johnson.
Today we are with Professor Serhat Güvenç to evaluate the future of US-Turkey relations. Professor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Senem Hanım.
After his visits, Erdoğan told reporters that I worked well with George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, but I cannot say we started well with Joe Biden. He said after 19 years in office, I can say that we have reached a good position with the US. And also Erdoğan returned to Turkey yesterday from New York without meeting with President Biden face-to-face. So if you were make a general assessment of both the visit and Erdoğan's statements, what would you say, Hocam?
Where we stand in Turkish-American relations, unfortunately, doesn't surprise me as a long-term observer of the bilateral relationships between the two countries. And although President Erdoğan tried to make a distinction between the Biden administration and his predecessors, when we look back, we cannot say that. I mean, the relations were running very smoothly under the presidency of George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, and Donald Trump. But what is different with the Biden administration is Biden has been reluctant to grant Erdoğan the personal access he's been yearning to get. Erdoğan, is used to dealing with other foreign leaders on a personal basis, and this is his way of discussing, addressing, and settling bilateral problems. Denied this opportunity, Erdoğan feels, kind of helpless in tackling major issues poisoning or plaguing Turkish-American relations, including the issue of S-400 missiles. Indeed, S-400 missiles has been stated as an existential matter by Washington shortly after Biden was elected the U.S. president. Instead of addressing this issue directly, the Turkish government or Erdoğan and his associates have been trying to come up with alternative ways of dealing with the situation by trying to create new stakes for the United States, such as Turkey's willingness to assume the security and the operations of the Kabul International Airport. However, this didn't work. Turkey has proved its nuisance value, especially in the Middle East. This is what most observers agree on. However, this nuisance value does not necessarily translate into positive gains in relations with the United States. Yes, Turkey has derailed some of the U.S. probably plans and projects in the Middle East, but at the end of the day, Ankara has not ended up better off by obstructing or obscuring United States policies in Turkey's neighborhood. Overall, it is not unexpected that this visit would not bear much of a substantial fruit, because despite relentless efforts, official, unofficial, backdoor, etc., President Erdoğan could not secure an appointment with President Biden before he left Turkey. That was for sure. So, and also, I mean, we heard that and we read that, Biden suggested foreign leaders should not come to New York for the United Nations General Assembly, opening of the General Assembly. However, Erdoğan wanted to give it another try. He pushed his luck and he unfortunately failed to get the access he was seeking with Biden. This tells me something. Biden is not interested in working with Turkey without institutions. He's not interested in developing personal relations with President Erdoğan to put Turkish-US relations back on track. And there is a huge, that means, excuse me, there is a huge gap between their understandings of how foreign policy should be run. Whereas Biden tends to rely on institutions, Erdoğan prefers to deal with foreign policy matters on a personal basis, as he does with most of the prominent world leaders, such as Putin. So this fits his style. So this discrepancy had to be addressed first and foremost, because the problem of lack of communication between the two parties is further deteriorating the already tense situation between the two countries. And if they stick to their respective positions, institutions versus personal relations, we may see a widening of their differences and the gap between the two so-called strategic partners. One detail which struck me in Erdoğan's statements, both in the United States and today, indeed, a few hours ago, he was very careful to emphasize that both the United States and Turkey are NATO members. So this implies that, as allies, they should be talking to each other. In a way, this means that Erdoğan has not given fully hope on Turkey's place in the Western security institutions. However, also, what is also implicit in his statements is that NATO may not be serving Turkey's interests. Therefore, Turkey, as it has been argued for a long time, may consider shifting axis. And his, indeed, reference to his personal relationship with President Putin of Russia probably should be taken as an indication of that. But we have a problem here. I mean, in order to be able to deal with Russia on a more or less equal standing, Turkey should have a few trump cards in its hand, and its membership in the Western security system, its alliance and partnership with the United States were among such trump cards for Turkey. It used to give Turkey a better hand in dealing with Russia. None of these trump cards are available to Turkey, especially to Erdoğan these days, and therefore Erdoğan is now has now to deal with Putin with a relatively weak hand. And Putin knows that, of course. And though he deals with Erdoğan on a personal basis, also he sits on a very well-developed institutional structure. We have to keep in mind that. Therefore, Putin will try to probably, any leader would indeed, as any leader would, and Putin will try to take advantage of the situation. And indeed, having not been able to restore, reinvigorate, recalibrate the relations with the United States, indeed, does not empower Turkey vis-a-vis Russia. Indeed, on the contrary, it weakens Turkey's hands in its dealings with Russia. So on many issues, Turkey is not able to play off, United States against Russia, and therefore its room for maneuver is much restricted compared to a situation where Ankara could maintain a relatively balanced relationship with both capitals, Washington, D.C. and Moscow. I've talked too much, so I should stop here, I guess.
Professor Güvenç, thank you for very much for your joining us today and your contributions.
Thank you.
We will continue with the Kurdish issue, Kurdish questions. Recent comments by the main opposition and the Republican People's Party leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu have ignited debate among politicians in Turkey regarding the actors needed to solve the Turkey's age-old struggles with its Kurdish minority. President Erdoğan dismisses the debate and saying the Kurdish question is already solved.
Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the leader of the Republican People's Party, said People's Democratic Party, HDP, is an interlocutor in the solution in the Kurdish problem, on a documentary called Bay Kemal ve İttifakları. He also said, it is very important that HDP is in parliament. There is a Kurdish problem that the political establishment has not been able to solve for 35-40 years. We need a legitimate organ to solve the issue. The establishment we call the state does not communicate with illegitimate organs. Who is a legitimate organ? We can consider the HDP as a legitimate organ. It has public support. After these words came to the agenda, HDP 1 deputy and former co-chair Sezai Temelli said via Twitter that jailed PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan is still the main interlocutor. A response got to Temelli from former HDP co-chairman Selahattin Demirtaş, who is in jail since 2016. Demirtaş, again via Twitter, said, the address of the solution is naturally the Turkish Grand National Assembly. Of course, HDP has the political knowledge and experience to know the open and transparent participation and interlocutor of all parties and segments in the solution. Speaking to Medyascope regarding Temelli's comments, HDP co-vice president Tayyip Temel clarified on Tuesday that Temelli's statements represent his personal view. Participating in the growing debate, Nationalist Movement Party leader Devlet Bahçeli described the HDP as a terrorist organization. Last but not least, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan said on September 23 that Turkey has no Kurdish problem and that his ruling Justice and Development Party had already solved the issue. There is no such problem in Turkey. We have already solved this issue, overcome it, and ended it. If there are those who believe in unity, solidarity, brotherhood, let them come and continue on the path all together, he said.
As dissatisfaction with Turkey's soaring rent prices has spread, student protests have appeared in cities across the country in recent weeks, leading to demonstration, arrest, and confrontation with police.
The protests, which started in Istanbul this past weekend, have since spread to other cities such as Ankara, Izmir, Kocaeli, and Gümüşhane. Following a year and a half of online education, many students are returning to in-person classes this fall and are being confronted with skyrocketing rent prices significantly higher than their pre-pandemic rates. Medyascope spoke to some of the youth involved in the protests. We have been left without housing due to the lack of capacity in dormitories and exorbitant fees of private dorms and the 20 to 290% increase in rents across Turkey. According to protesters, for Turkey's 10 million student population, only 700,000 dormitory spaces exist. The students, whose protests involve sleeping in the park overnight, also expressed that their chosen method of protest was the one most likely to elicit a reaction and attract attention towards the issue of student housing prices. Similar protests were witnessed in Izmir, Kocaeli, and Gümüşhane. A photo circulating on social media showed a student lying alone on a mattress placed directly in front of the entrance to Gümüşhane University. Since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, rent prices in many large Turkish cities have doubled and even tripled. Currency devaluation and changes in housing supply and demand caused by the pandemic have been cited as reasons for the increase.
Don't stay at home, don't eat spicy food. These were some of the messages given the representative of refugee communities by Bolu Governor Ahmet Ümit. Here's more of these controversial instructions.
In a speech he delivered at a meeting, Governor Ahmet Ümit indicated that they have conducted studies to identify the behaviors of refugees that spark animosity among locals. The list of good manners expected from refugees includes some extreme suggestions, such as not going out after 9 o'clock in the evening unless necessary, avoiding congregation in large groups in public areas such as parks or squares, and even not using excessive spice in meals. Refugees are expected to refrain from staring at locals, especially women, or making irritating remarks, to give Turkish names to their businesses, to pay attention to personal hygiene, and to avoid playing loud music or speaking loudly. According to the statements, refugees were told to refrain from making misleading comments that may disturb unity in their social media posts and to avoid flags, banners, or similar symbols other than Turkish ones. Hate crimes against refugees and migrants have been escalating in the country in recent years. In July, Bolu Mayor Tanju Özcan said that his municipality plans to increase the water and solid waste tax received from foreign nationals by 10 times. In August, by a majority of votes, the Bolu Municipal Council approved the mayor's proposal.
Germans are voting on Sunday in parliamentary elections that mark the end of the Angela Merkel's 16 years in office. In recent weeks, opinion polls have given a center-left lead over the outgoing Chancellor's Conservatives for the first time in 15 years. But one thing is clear. Whoever wins will have to put together a coalition. As Medyascope, we follow the German elections very closely. In fact, our correspondent, Doğu Eroğlu, is in Berlin right now. We will learn the latest development from him. Doğu, welcome.
Hello,
welcome. Is
Hello.
everything okay? How are you?
Everything is fine. Actually, Berlin is getting colder every day, but I cannot say the same thing for the political atmosphere. As today, tens of thousands of climate protesters fill the streets. And as of now, even after this, like 5 hours after the beginning of the demonstrations, they're still on the streets and they're asking for more progressive climate policies. And if nothing, it shows how focal the climate issues are on the road to German elections.
You have been there for a few days. Can you tell us about your impressions much more?
You said it right. We're going to see a coalition, whatever the results are. So the Germans are going to decide which leniency the coalition is going to have at the Sunday's elections. So current polls says that the Social Democrat Party, SPD, is running as first with 26%. And the second is CDU, the Christian Democratic Union. They're very close to SPD with 22%. And the third is the Green Party. Mm-hmm. But the Green Party might make a surprise because during the German elections, just like in the US, the postal ballot is active, which means voters already turned out their votes 6 weeks prior to actual voting day. So some of the pundits warned me that during the time of the beginning of the postal voting, Green Party were much more appreciated. And after some of the events regarding Annalena Baerbock's personal life, which includes plagiarism scandal, the Greens do not really appreciate it in the latest weeks, but this might, the beginning of the postal voting 6 weeks ago might change the scenery because they might receive much more votes as of anticipated by now.
Though, what are the people's expectations in Germany about the new coalition?
The new coalition, that's the big question. Well, I think a coalition which includes SPD and some of the left parties is highly anticipated, but different communities expect different things from the upcoming coalition. Well, the first things first, I gotta say that there's a huge feeling of uncertainty, even some might say fear, after Merkel's stepping down, because during the last 2 decades, in the 16 years she had stayed in the office, she managed to keep Germany from many turmoils that the rest of the world went into. So there's a fear that the new era in German politics might be more challenging than this. But let's talk about the Turkish community in here and the remainder of the community. What do they expect from the vote? Well, the Turkish community's demands are pretty clear. They want members of the Turkish community, the immigrant community, to be more included into bureaucracy, into more influential jobs, and they want the education system to be reformed so that the Turkish people are included into higher schools easier. That's the main issue for the immigrant society. But on the other hand, the German population really tends to make the climate crisis a more priority than the remainder of the population, the immigrant societies. And the climate policies are the main areas, one of the main areas. The three leading parties are different from each other. The leading party, SPD, has a more balanced approach to climate policies. They want to keep Germany as a global leader of industry, and at the same time they want to reform the industry according to the climate crisis. But when it comes to CDU, such an approach is lacking, and for the Green Party, obviously their primary focus on when it comes to economy is the climate crisis, so that they want to reform the whole economic system, whole social system in accordance with the requirements of the climate crisis for downgrading the carbon emissions. So that's one of the large issues, one of the core topics that German people are discussing amongst each other.
So thank you for contributions and experience. This has been This Week in Turkey. I'm Senem Görür. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.
Türkiye'nin sivil, bağımsız, özgür ve çoğulcu bir medya ortamına ihtiyacı var. Medyascope 20 Ağustos 2015'te bu ihtiyacı karşılamak üzere yola çıktı. Ama yolumuz uzun. Bu yolculukta bize Patreon veya YouTube'un katıl butonu üzerinden katkıda bulunabilirsiniz. Destek verin, sizinle güçlenelim.